Today, for the test review, I'm going to put up the answers for 1A, B, C, and D. So I'll put up the answers for some problems, and for other problems I'll actually show you some explanation. My challenge for you is if you don't get the correct answer after you've done your whole test review, you have to find one person in the class who can show you how to do that problem. You try your classmates. If you can't find anybody, which I'm sure you can, then you can come see me. Alright, so for the first part, we've done quite a bit with that, so I'm just going to put the answers for your first part. This is where you can use the box to multiply or the distributive property. The answer to 1A is x squared minus 12x plus 35. So x squared minus 12x plus 35. And the answer to 1B is x plus 8 squared, which means x plus 8 times x plus 8. So it's x squared plus 16x plus 64. The answer to 1C is x squared minus 49 because your middle terms cancel out. And the answer to 1D is 4x squared plus 30x plus 14. Now this is multiplying. For number one, it says write each product in equivalent ax plus bx plus ax squared plus bx plus c form. So really, they just want you to put it together. So, and then the second one, in number two, it's asking you to factor the polynomials. So now you're taking it apart. Up here, you put it together, and now you're going to take it apart. So we learned a trick how you can multiply a times c. And down here you put your magic number, which is b. A in this situation is 1 because we don't see it. So 1 times 32 is 32. And then our magic number is negative 12. So now we have to figure out what we can multiply to get the 32 that we can add to get negative 12. Well, I know that 8 times 4 is 32. But I also know that negative 8 times negative 4 is positive 32, and negative 8 plus negative 4 is negative 12. So now we have what we need to get our problem complete. You always put your first term in your first box, and your last term in your last box, after you have everything in standard form. And then in these two diagonals, we're going to put what we found. We split our middle term, so sometimes people call that splitting the b's. So that's actually negative 8x plus negative 4x. So just don't forget to put your x here because that's what that is. It combines to become negative 12x. Now we're going to factor out our GCFs. You go across your rows and you put one answer here and one answer here. And then you go up your columns and put that answer up top and that answer. The GCF of x squared and negative 4x is just x because that's what they have in common, the highest thing they have in common. With your variables, you always choose the lowest power that you see. If every single term has it, you can take it out, but you have to take it out with the lowest power. So now with negative 8x and positive 32, the highest number that goes into both of those is the negative 8. Now let's go up and down. X squared and negative 8x has a GCF of x. And negative 4x and 32 has a GCF of negative 4. You have to take a negative 4 because that's the first term. So whatever's in that first box where you're actually doing your GCF, that's the sign that goes up there. So we have our answer. X minus 4 times x minus 8. You can always check yourself by multiplying x times x is x squared. Negative 4x plus negative 8x is negative 12x, and then negative 4 times negative 8 is positive 32. So your answer was x minus 4 times x minus 8. And let's move over here and let's look at 2b. For 2b, something seems to be missing. Well, that's our middle term. So the way we'll do this, our a is 1, our b is 0 because it's not there, and our c is negative 121. So when we multiply a times c, we're going to get negative 121. So we have negative 121. We bring down our middle term, which is 0. Now we have to think of factors, two things we can multiply to get negative 121, but subtract to get 0. So they have to be opposites in order for you to subtract them to get 0. Well, positive 11 times negative 11 is negative 121, and 11 minus 11 is 0. So we have it. Remember, in your first box, you always put your first term. Our first term is x squared. And in our last box, we always put our last term, which is negative 121. What do you put in your diagonals? Right, you're going to put in your 11x and your minus 11x. And now it's just a GCF game. You just take out your GCFs across and up and down. X squared and negative 11x have a GCF of x. 11x and negative 121 have a GCF of 11. So now we go up. X squared and x have a GCF of x. Negative 11 and negative 121, you have your GCF of negative 11. So our answer is x minus 11 times x plus 11, because this one's positive. So that's your answer to 2B. We're going to move on to number 2, letter C. For 2C, we have 16x plus 30x squared, and we have to factor it. We only have 2 terms. Oftentimes when you have 2 terms, if you have the x term and the x squared term, then you'll want to try to see if you can take out a GCF, because you don't have your first, middle, and last. But you do have 2 terms here. Let's see if we can factor out GCF. Our GCF is 2. You always want to look for that. Just so happened in other problems our GCF was 1, so we were okay. And then our GCF of our variables would be x. So we want to know what goes in these parentheses so that if we multiply by 2x, we get that back. So you can divide each term by your greatest common factor of 2x, and that'll give you your answer. 16 divided by 2 is 8. And x divided by x is 1, so you don't put that. Plus 30 divided by 2 is 15, and x squared divided by x is x, because when you divide with variables and powers, you subtract the exponents. So that's your answer. 8 and 15 don't have any GCFs that you can take out further, so you know you got your final answer, which is 2x times the expression 8 plus 15x. Let's go to 2D. For 2D, we want to factor 3x squared plus x minus 2. I like this one because it has a coefficient of 3 there, so it'll be a little more challenging. So first times last is 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. Well, our magic number is 1, so we bring down 1. Now we ask ourselves, what can we multiply to get negative 6 that we can combine to get 1? So let's think. We have 2 times 3, that's 6. Can we subtract 2 and 3 in some way to get positive 1? Well, if 2 is negative, we have 3 minus 2, and that's 1. So that's very good. If you have 1 for your magic number, then your other numbers need to be back to back so that when you subtract, you get 1. So now we make our box. And in our first box, we always put our first term, which is 3x squared. In our last box, we put our last term. If you have your polynomial in descending order in standard form. Okay, so now in the diagonal boxes, remember that we split our b's, that's what they call it. So we put our negative 2x and our positive 3x. Now we take the GCF of the row and the GCF of the bottom row, the GCF of the first column and the GCF of the second column. GCF of our first row is 3x. The GCF of our second row, we have a negative, so it's negative 2. The GCF of our first column is just x, because 1 comes out of the numbers, but you don't need to show that. And the GCF of our second column is just 1. You have to show because there's nothing else there, so you have to bring your 1 out. So we have x plus 1, because that's a positive 1, times 3x minus 2. And you can check yourself, 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x minus 2x is 1x, and 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. So this is your final answer for number 2, letter D. Let's move to number 3. For number 3, we want to write a rule for a quadratic function with a graph that has x-intercept of negative 4, 0, and y-intercept of 6, it should be, oh, okay, it has x-intercept of negative 4, 0, and 6, 0, so those are x-intercepts, and we have a y-intercept of 0, 12. So now we have our x-intercepts and we have a y-intercept. So we can actually write the equation of a polynomial given those 3 points. Remember this, f of x is equal to, and I'm going to put a in a different color. See if you can remember why I'm doing that. A times x minus s times x minus t. So what you have to do is you have to write the equation of the polynomial with these x-intercepts, or solutions, or zeros, or roots, and this y-intercept. So we're going to plug and chug at the beginning and solve for a. After we solve for a, we can write our equation. F of x is the same as y, so you get your x and your y from the y-intercept. And your x-intercepts will be where you get your s and your t. So I'm going to write that over here. S is equal to negative 4, and t is equal to 6. So now let's fill in all our places. We have f of x, which is 12, is equal to a. A we don't know. X minus s. So x is 0 minus s, which is negative 4. Again, x is 0 minus t, which is 6. So now we just work it out. We have 12 is equal to a. And then we have, you can think of this as a negative times a negative, or the opposite of negative 4. So it's 4 times negative 6. So 12 is equal to 8 times negative 24. We're solving for a, so we have to move that negative 24. We cannot have that a times negative 24 hanging over there. So we're going to divide both sides by negative 24. And it reduces to negative 1/2. So we found our a. Now we go back and we plug it in. Let's make sure all our signs are correct, Amanda. Let's see. Our 12 up here is negative, so I didn't write that negative. Let's make sure we write that negative 12. And that's going to change that to positive 1/2. Because the 12 in your problem is negative. Sorry, I did not see the negative, so we have to put that in there. This 12 is negative, so it's negative here, negative here, negative here. A negative divided by negative is a positive. And now we can write our final answer. In your final answer, you only plug in for 3 variables. You plug in for A for 3 values, S and T. You keep your X and F of X, and those are your variables. So we have F of X is equal to 1/2 times X minus S. Well, S is negative 4 times X minus T, which is 6. So F of X is equal to 1/2 times x. Negative and a negative is a positive 4 times x minus 6. And that's your equation. So it's kind of fun if you get the hang of this process, because the first time you just identify your x-intercepts, that's your s and your t, and you identify your x and y coordinates of your third point, and you plug in everywhere except for a. Then after you get what you need, which is a, you go back and just fill in the equation with only a, s, and t being filled in. So f of x stays f of x stays x each time. So the only thing that's going to change is your a, your s, and your t. Alright? And that's number 3. We have one more problem to do on this page, and that problem is number 4. So in the number 4 requires us to use a quadratic formula. Okay, problem number 4. For problem number 4, we have A, solve the quadratic equation, use the quadratic formula. You must show your work for full credit. It's 2x squared minus 3x minus 20. So we're solving. So, remember your song. I'm not going to sing it, but remember your song. So we need the quadratic formula. X is equal to opposite of b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. So you have your formula. So now let's identify our a. We're in standard form. That's important. So a is equal to 2, b is equal to negative 3, and c is equal to negative 20. Now we just go through plug and chug pretty much. X is equal to, the opposite of b is the opposite of negative 3, plus or minus the square root of b squared, negative 3 squared, minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2a. Well, the opposite of negative 3 is 3, plus or minus the square root of, don't forget this goes in parentheses when you square it, so it's positive 9. A negative times a negative means that's also going to be a plus sign there. 4 times 2 is 8, and then you do 8 times 2, you get 16, so that's going to be 160. Yep, 160. So this is turning out pretty nicely. All divided by 2a. Let me plug in my a. My a is 2. So x is equal to 3 plus or minus, you can plug in a at the beginning, that would have been a good spot. Square root of 169, 2 times 2 is 4. X is equal to 3 plus or minus 13, all divided by 4. Now you work on your two cases. We have x equals 3 plus 13 divided by 4. And we have x equals 3 minus 13 divided by 4. Well, that's equal to 16 divided by 4. So one of our answers will be x equals 4. And this is equal to negative 10 divided by 4. And so your other answer is x is equal to negative 5/2. And that's number 4. So we're going to take a little break, and then you're going to flip over to the back of your paper and see if you get those answers correct as well.